We have time for one final question, and this, I think everybody will probably want to participate. How do we operate more out of love than fear, out of hope rather than hopelessness, and how do we have faith in the midst of the fury?
There's a poet that says,
I think we have to remember that we are not called to win. And that's not what I want to say, and probably not what you want to hear right now. But part of the problem with Christian nationalism is the demand to win, and to win at all costs. But what do you end up winning? Right? And we are called to be faithful, not to get our way, and not to mandate that others do what we think they ought to do. We can use our powers of persuasion, and we can model, and there's all sorts of things that we can do, but we cannot coerce our way to the kind of victory that we are seeking. And I think that, and this is something Jamar might have more to say on, that white folks tend to get weary quickly, right? I'm one of them. And get discouraged quickly because, man, we've been working hard and things aren't going our way. Right? And so where do we turn to? What do we draw on? What is the source of our strength, of our resilience? What does it mean to be faithful? Right? What does it mean to be faithful? And I know for some of us, we've been setting our sights on November 5. Some of us have for the last 4 years, looking ahead to this day. It's not the end of anything. It could be the beginning of something else entirely. But our call to obedience, to do justice, to love kindness, our call to be courageous does not end November 5. Right? Yeah. And so we need the spiritual strength, the historical rootedness, the community of saints to remind us of these things, because it might be scary. We might be afraid. But we have to, as has already been said, we have to borrow that courage. Yeah, what do you guys have to say?
I don't want to go after Jamar.
Yeah. Oh, come on. so Jamar, we're probably close to time, right?
Yeah.
So Jamar, you want to take us home, Jamar?
I do. I want to say something, though.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah. But I just don't want to go after him.
Jamar. Okay, I got it.
Right.
Funny.
And that is the question: is how to hold yourself to faith, hope, and love, essentially in these kinds of times. And I can tell you exactly what I do here. I'm a historian, and when I used to teach at the university level, one of the things I would do is teach this long church history class, and then I would say at the end of the church history class, you've studied church history for 13 weeks, now go out and make it, to my students. And that was, what I was trying to do with that was always give my students this sort of longer vision, is that the stories of the past stretch into the future. And that is something that's really important to me, is that we're part of this. We really are part of a long arc of history. King was absolutely right. It's long. The arc of history is long. And then it was after I started teaching that I had a baby when I was almost 40, and it did not make me a better human being. Or a more valuable citizen, I can tell you that.
You just tiptoe right up there.
I have this beautiful daughter who is now 27 years old, and her whole life has been spent in this crisis. And somehow, when she was little, I thought to myself, whatever history it is that I'm making with my life, it includes her. And that I want to live in such a way that her life is going to be in a better America. And so I always had this vision of the fact that I'm really doing all of this for my daughter. And when things got really intense, I would say in the last 9 or 10 years, it's been just, that's the thing that's really held my feet to it, is how can I create the best world and live the best way as her mother to move things ahead. And so now we have this sort of joke in the house is when I'm gone, and maybe this will happen for you when your kids get a little bit older, but I'll see the text threads that are going in the family, and Richard will say, oh, sorry, Mom's out of town right now, she can't help you with XYZ. And then my daughter will say, oh yeah, she's off fighting fascism. And if that's the way that my 27-year-old daughter remembers her mother, who was born, who gave birth when she was almost 40, so she's going to live a lot longer than me. I hope. If that's the way she remembers me, that's the way I want to be remembered. And so that's what I ask you all to think about. Not about your own fears, and not about your own failures, and not about your own shortcomings. How is it that you want your children and your grandchildren to tell the story of your life right now and how you responded in these days? Because guess what? When we're all gone, they will tell the story.
Yeah. Amen.
And they're either going to call you a coward or a person who sat on the fence, or they're going to say, Mom was out there fighting fascism. Sure, she missed some soccer games. But she stood up when it mattered.
Yeah.
And that's I think you all want that.
Yeah. All right, Jamar.
I just go back to this verse, Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Just like that Bible verse about fear and anxiety, where God doesn't just give us that command, God attaches a promise to it. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for I will be with you wherever you go. My confession to you this evening is I am very selfish in this justice work. Because what I find in this justice work is that as I pursue justice, I get more of Jesus. Are we too, advanced and intelligent and sure of ourselves that we can't admit that we need Jesus? I hope not. What I love about that verse is it attaches a promise, for I will be with you wherever you go. And I can tell you from personal experience, there is a closeness with Jesus that you will not experience until you have followed the path of justice, just like Jesus did. Jesus said, take up your cross, follow me. But see, here's the good part. In the Old Testament, there was this promise, for I will be with you wherever you go. But look what happens in the New Testament. There was this baby that was born. And they called this baby Emmanuel, which means what? God with us. Do you see what God did? He took that promise, those words, and he made those words flesh in the form of Jesus, who lived the way we're all supposed to live. Because what I hear behind that question is, how in the midst of an unjust society can we live like Jesus? It's by following Jesus. The command was be strong and courageous, but the promise is I'll be with you wherever you go. And the seal on that promise is the word becomes flesh in the form of Emmanuel, God with us. Do you believe God is with you? Do you believe that when you follow the path of justice, you're following the path of Jesus? And when you pursue justice, that you can lose all kind of things. Remember that verse where it says, Jesus, your mother and your sisters and brothers are looking for you. And Jesus said, who are my mother and sisters and brothers? Whoever does the will of the Father in heaven. Guess who's your mother and your sister and your brother in this room? Who's ever doing the will of God. So you may lose family, you may lose friends, you may lose money, you may lose jobs. But what does it profit us to gain the world and lose our souls? So how can you live like Jesus in the midst of an unjust world? You believe that promise that God is with you. And then, oh, God is so good. Because as soon as you take that little step of faith, that little risk to step up and stand up for truth and righteousness and justice and to do mercy and to love kindness and to walk humbly with God, you know what God does? He says, I'm right there with you. And he gives you this sweet experience of God's presence that you cannot get enough of. And that's what keeps you going.